Now, one person we did hear from today for the first time, Karen Read herself, doubling down, of course, saying she did not do this. She wants to know who did.
Said it feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in the only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit to it?
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how does that sound? Finally, sorry. My apologies. I'm on vacation and I had to take a mic with me. That's not my usual mic, so if I sound weird, that's why. I just had to take like a little lavalier mic. I'm in Karen Read country actually right now. So today we're going to talk about Karen Read and Aiden Turtleboy Carney and their relationship, and doth Aiden protest too much when it comes to talking about whether he was given the grand jury documents, which is illegal, by Karen Read. So first thing we're going to look at is, of course, Aiden on his own show. And this was clipped by the Great Innocence Fraud Watch. Take a listen.
I'm a little bit skeptical. There was one point where I was a little bit skeptical about Colin in the house, and I pushed him on it. And I got evidence of Colin in the house. I got the grand jury testimony. I got the court docs from like September or whatever.
Never once did Karen Read ever send me any grand jury documents. To the contrary, she made it clear that she couldn't. She wasn't allowed to send grand jury documents. She sent me evidence that was, like police reports and stuff like that hadn't been made public yet. Right. But she didn't send, and you're allowed to do that. You're legally allowed to do that. It just, all that proves is that, she was a source for me, essentially, on the story.
Let's talk about a little bit about Karen.
So, no, grand jury documents are secret. The testimony should be secret, unless it's not secret for Karen Read or my understanding, her lawyers, but it is secret for the public, and it should not be released to the public. And it seems like it was released to Aiden, who quickly corrects himself and it's like, hey, it's not illegal to do that. It's not illegal. It's just like any other secret grand jury documents are just like any other documents, right, guys? But on M. William Phelps' podcast, 34 Fairview Road, which 40% of it goes directly to Aiden Turtleboy Carney. So every download that you're downloading, 40% of it goes into Turtleboy's pocket, I guess, to help with his defense on all his witness intimidation charges. Goes directly to him or directly to Aiden's lawyers or worse.
So the first time that you have contact with her, and what's it about?
First time I had contact with her, I called her on the Signal app. We used to use this encrypted app called Signal. And, I just didn't want to go through anymore. And so it's like, you can call her. And I'm like, okay. And so I just called her and she answered the phone and we talked for a long time.
That name I bleeped out is one of Karen Read's college peers who became involved within the first few days of the story breaking. Some claim she glommed onto Karen.
I wouldn't call it. Hold on one second. I got to call. I wouldn't call it Karen's peers. She felt really badly for Karen. This is Natalie, of course. And she became the middle woman between Aiden and Karen. So when he says, I got really sick of it, it's like meaning I got sick of going through an intermediary. And I just decided to call her on an encrypted app. Nothing unusual about that here, right? Nothing unusual about talking on an app that you don't know what you're going to say, and is really a lot harder for the police to find out what you talked about or to track you. Nothing unusual about talking on an encrypted app, because everything we were doing was 100% legal, guys.
Karen and muscled her way into becoming Karen's quasi-public relations person, helping Karen navigate her image and feed information Karen and her team wanted to put out into the public domain without having any public connection to releasing it. From the research I've done and the evidence the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has released, the opposite seems to be true. For now, after getting Karen's number from her friend, Turtleboy starts talking directly to Karen.
Oh, actually, the first time I ever talked to Karen Read directly was on May 3rd. And that is when set this all up.
According to a warrant in connection to this case, on April 13th, 2023, Karen's friend mentions the name Turtleboy to Karen as a blogger with a large following who would like to start reporting on her case. Karen's friend and Turtleboy begin speaking on April 17th. Shortly after that, Karen Read agrees to begin working with Turtleboy, or rather, feeding him information through her friend, avoiding any direct connection to releasing it. At one point, Turtleboy is encouraged to meet Karen in person along with her attorneys at a local Boston bar. So he goes.
And I just introduced myself and we talked for a while. And it was my first time ever speaking to Karen Read directly. And I remember that one of the first things I asked her was, I'm like, how much do you hate Jennifer McCabe? And she said, not nearly as much as I hate Michael Proctor.
Right, because those are the two people that have Karen Read's number. So, of course, and they have the most evidence on her. She liked Jen McCabe enough to make her the mark, right? He was to pick her up, to do her hysterics in front of and help her find, quote unquote, John O'Keefe, Carrie Roberts. And of course, I think what she really resented Jen McCabe for was that Jen McCabe was there for John O'Keefe before she got to take care of the children that I believe she resented and loathed. If you look at Karen Read's text messages on the night of the murder of John O'Keefe, she's saying, well, the four of us are toxic, meaning the two children, John O'Keefe and herself, are all toxic together. Like it's the children that make it toxic. It's not psychopath Karen Read that makes it toxic. It's the children that make it toxic, guys. So who else does she hate? Michael Proctor. So she had picked out the people that were going to be her enemies, the ones that got her number. He was like, yeah, she's going down. I mean, forget about Michael Proctor's mean text messages. I mean, I would expect police officers to talk about me that way if I killed someone in this manner. I don't really have a problem with a police officer calling me a see you next Tuesday if I did this. But I understand people are very sensitive, around certain words. It was unprofessional, but that was his, he thought he didn't know that these were going to be brought up in a criminal trial, but that's how Karen Read gets you. She finds anything embarrassing to make you the villain, goes through your Facebook. If you go back a couple episodes, goes through your Facebook, stalks you until she can make you the enemy. That's how she works. It's also coincidentally how Aiden Carney works. So, but if you go back to those messages with Natalie's like, oh, she thought you were really great. Oh, and the lawyers thought you were great. And Aiden's all nervous. He doesn't know. It's like he's dining with royalty. It's like he's about to meet the queen. Not an accused murderer. Forget that. It's the queen. And maybe he should be nervous because all his money has come from her crime. Exploiting her crime. Pretty revolting. It seems like everybody on both sides of this issue, so many people are just in it for their own reasons. Either they have a beef with Aiden or they just want the clicks and views, or they want to start they're jealous of Aiden. They want to be the non-supporter version of Aiden Carney. I mean, who's sticking up for John O'Keefe and the O'Keefe family in this? And M. William Phelps will go into his background. He's presented himself like, hey, my sister-in-law was murdered and I took her kids, but it's not like right after, and that's really not, he's concocted his own fantastical line of events. She gave up her kids many years before that happened. So he's created his own myth around himself. And both Aiden and Phelps share the same manager who made this deal. And there's some interesting things going around the documentary. Everybody's competing to get out their documentary and have exclusive rights. And of course, if you caught Aiden recently, he's like, oh, the Gretchen Voss documentary, which is like, that thing's not coming out till August. Like, what help is that going to be to the O'Keefe family? I mean, what that documentary is essentially done is basically button up everybody's lip and take away one of the greatest pieces in our arsenal, which is the O'Keefe family giving interviews as a family. If they've signed up with Gretchen Voss, it's an exclusive rights and nobody can talk. So Karen Read can be disseminating her innocence fraud narrative all over our media. But everybody who's signed with Gretchen Voss can't talk. And who cares how? I mean, I just hear people saying like, oh, well, just wait till that documentary's out. What does it matter? What is it going to matter if it comes out in August or later, when Karen Read's either been acquitted or convicted on a few lesser charges? I mean, she could really get away with this. I don't think people are getting it.
Because Michael Proctor, Jennifer McCabe is what she is, but Michael Proctor is the person that we're supposed to count on to stop people like Jennifer McCabe and hold them accountable. And he betrayed the public trust. And so what he did is a million times worse than anything Jennifer McCabe did. And so I thought that was interesting. So I had a conversation with them. A few weeks later, her and I began conversing like on the phone. And,
he didn't betray my trust. He had a perfect disciplinary record as far as I've heard. This is the worst he's done, is been mad at someone who killed a cop in this way and use some language not fit for church. Didn't betray my trust. I think it's disgusting that the Massachusetts State Police has rolled over and capitulated to this innocence fraud narrative. I mean, if anybody's betrayed the public trust, it's the Mass State Police disciplining Proctor. And the rumor is, we don't know if it's true or not, but the rumor is that he's going to get fired over this. Because, when they announced it, they were like, we were getting rid of corruption in the department. What corruption? The guy was angry, overworked, wrote some tweets, working in a nor'easter, excuse me. And that's what happens, is that these innocence fraud campaigns, they target the really good cops that get these criminals, and it leaves room for bad cops to take their place. And then it becomes, is that a self-fulfilling prophecy? I don't know if it's a prophecy. It's what the Innocence Project says is going on all over. So much corruption, tunnel vision cops. So the department becomes what they've been talking about. And then the movement can go, well, see, look, in this case, in that case, in that case. Because they've been doing this. I heard at one point they wanted to look at every case Michael Proctor was a part of. Somehow Yuri Bekenic, because he made none of these texts, is somehow didn't betray the public's trust. If it is just a matter between his text and their investigation, come on, it's ridiculous. I mean, you can clutch pearls, and in my view, I would expect that. Most people don't have the courage to do these jobs.
We would talk for a long time.
Turtleboy has shown me some of their texting back and forth, so I verified that he has had a long relationship with Karen Read. regarding those phone calls, texts, and meetings with Karen, I asked Turtleboy a valid question.
And did you record any of it?
No.
No. Wait, how much do you want to bet that's untrue? No, I don't believe you. How about that? How about that, Aiden? No, I don't believe you. Like both Aiden and Karen Read are very similar in that they like to create evidence for themselves. They like to record people. So you're going to say you recorded Lindsay, but you didn't record Karen Read? And Lindsay, the woman who accused you of SA, you recorded her at her most hysterical? That is the most disturbing piece of tape I've ever heard. One of them. I mean, you can hear Aiden just absolutely getting off on it, for lack of better word or description. Sorry to be so crude. But if you want to talk about a psychopath, sadist, listen to that recording. She's absolutely distraught, and he's getting more and more excited by his own feelings of power and control, and getting excited in almost in a sexual way over it. It's revolting. So it seems like Karen Read handed Aiden, from what I heard there, though he denies it at one part, confirms it, then denies it, right? The grand jury documents they shouldn't have had, transcripts. Pretty interesting. And let me get into your comments, and then we're going to watch so if you don't know, there's a podcast called 34 Fairview Road by M. William Phelps. And they both have the same manager, Matthew Valentinus, meaning Aiden and Phelps both have the same manager. And they've agreed to give Aiden 40% of all the profits from the downloads of 34 Fairview to Aiden. So he started promoting it very early and had Phelps on his podcast. And it's a interesting moment between the two of them. We're going to look at it, but first let's get into just some short comments from last time. Last time, sorry about the audio issues, guys. That was a new one. A new one, the new buzz. It was actually my computer. If anybody's wants to solve that or was worried about solving that mystery, that's what it was making that buzz, was just the slowness of my computer. Let's get into your comments.
We got your comments. You had something to say. You were insightful. Oh, so clever. So Roberta's going to read your comments. Hey, Roberta, read those comments.
Okay, number one, Pasha 21K says, I missed the live, but I love this beginning. I laugh so hard each time I've seen it. That's my opening with I've marshaled every resource. We all know who did it. She did it. Please spare us her declamations. Say it on the stand under cross-examination. I was so happy they got Brennan, that's Hank Brennan, the former defense attorney. Now he's the specially appointed prosecutor in this case, Hank Brennan, who defended Whitey Bulger, to head the state. Yeah, he seems like he's Pasha, he seems like he's really aware of every sleazy defense trick. And he's not gonna have any of this, hey, we'll get the car data from the infotainment system for you. Do you guys hear that train going on behind me? I wonder if you hear it. Trains going by. Reminds me of, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Blues Brothers. How often does that train go by? So often you won't even notice it. Bunny Buchanan says Yannetti was asked by a reporter if they were still going with the third-party defense. He didn't want to comment. Since they're having Russell back, that's Marie Russell, the dog bite expert, are they throwing Chloe the dog under the bus? Well, it seems like she's coming back. So it looks like they're going to blame the dog. Someone said that they have a new philosophy of true crime since the staircase when Michael Peterson, they didn't do it in the staircase, but after the staircase, the neighbor, Pollard, who's also a defense lawyer, I believe he's a civil lawyer, started to blame it on an owl. Their theory was anytime they blame it on an animal, you know the person's guilty. In this case, Karen Read's blaming it on a dog. It was a terrible dog driver. Could have 24 miles an hour in reverse, 75% on the pedal because he couldn't, his dog leg's going to go all the way down. Is that the way it worked? Renee Mason, 9183 says, LMAO. The money this is costing Karen and her family is enjoyable. I bet they have already spent $2, $5, or $3 million, or just the last case. Addies are probably staying at the Ritz-Carlton, plus food and drinks for attorneys and staff. The investigators, experts, paralegals, experts, first-class airfare, media team, and the list goes on, and the legal fees continuing to escalate. Yeah, I don't really believe that she's in debt, $5 million. I don't believe she's in debt at all. I think, if anything, she's making a fortune on her crime. That's just my opinion. And I believe that $5 million figure that she floated out to Julie Miller in Vanity Fair was a way to keep the Do Re Mi coming in and just keep milking her gullible supporters. That's my theory. Because I remember there was some emails from Karen to her lawyers, and I believe Yannetti one was taking $500,000 and Yannetti was taking $300,000. And I believe that the taxpayers pay some of the money for the experts. And I know she only had a media expert for like a month. I mean, who needs any media expert when you have Turtleboy and a full innocence fraud campaign going? When it just seems to make every person who gets on the free Karen Read side so rich. So let's take a look at. Oh, but before we do that, and William Phelps, I do want to take a look at that. They're having some issues, and William Phelps. Hold on one second. Okay. Thanks for your patience, guys. This is a tweet by Rosalie on X, formerly known as Twitter. This is Turtleboy. This is what Turtleboy and his cult are up to. He threatens to dox them because he didn't answer when Aiden called four times during he was live. He called one of the times and said that M. William Phelps lied when he said that it was proven that John O'Keefe's hair was on Karen's car. So he's like just he's calling him during his lives, meaning Aiden is calling M. William Phelps during his lives and taunting him. Let's take a.
This has been a fun sex cult. Making fun of this douchebag Phelpsy. Left a couple voicemails. Left a couple voicemails. If he blocks me, I'm just gonna put his number out there next time. Fuck it. If he doesn't want to talk to me, he can talk to you. You can block all you people if I want. I'll put his fucking number out there. I don't give a shit. You're not gonna ignore me like this, Phelpsy. It ain't gonna happen. Okay. Anybody got any questions or anything? Give us the fucking dirt on the manager. What's his name? So I'm going to write a whole story on it. His name is Matt Valentinus. He's been like a fan for years. You know me when I read a story, it's thorough. I document the whole background between us and really.
It's thorough as long as I'm being given the full records from the grand jury meeting that nobody has. Yeah, because I'm an expert on my relationship with him.
Fuck him. He's the bigger problem, in my opinion. You know, he's supposed to represent my interests. Fuck this guy. So, you know, if he doesn't call me back, I'm going to put his number out there next week. Because if he's blocked me, then I'll have you guys try calling him.
So that's one part of it.
Out there next week. Because if he's blocked me, then I'll have you guys try calling.
Okay. But then there's this.
Or press 1 for more options. Or press 1 for more options.
Phelpsy, sorry to bother you. It's A. Timothy Kearney again, award-winning journalist. Just heard on the pod that you said that, I believe this is the quote.
Got to work on the clothing John O'Keefe was wearing, along with all the other evidence collected, including a hair found on the back bumper of Karen's SUV, which will soon be determined by science to be John's.
So he said it was determined by science to be John's hair, okay? And that's a problem because I must have missed in the testimony where it was ever determined that was John's hair, ever. And also you failed to acknowledge.
Or press 1 for more options.
Yeah, it was determined to be John's hair. It did have a root that was found on the back of her car. Does anybody remember that testimony? She spent a long time, that expert, in Cross. So Aiden is trying to make a rivalry between the two of them. And I just thought it'd be interesting to see where it started. Looks like it started when Aiden had him on his show. Let's take a listen, shall we?
How I want to start off the show tonight is I want to have on my buddy Matt Phelps, or Matt M.W. Phelps, or M. William Phelps. I'm not even sure what to call him sometimes. He is I'm an award-winning journalist. He's an award-winning podcaster. He does a lot of true crime stuff, and he's taken an interest in the Karen Read case particularly. And many months ago, he began to really delve into this. He knew the basics, I think, beforehand, but now he's really jumped into it and taken it all in and just consuming it from everywhere. He's interviewed me extensively, but he's also interviewed who else we've had, like that I know off the top of my head. Sean in the Gulf is on the podcast. Rita Lombardi. Mark Bettero's on there. Jen Altman's on there. And there may or may not be a couple surprises that we're not going to announce. But, you know, you got to get the other side, right? And you might hear on the trailer, Plevin is on there too. But it's like you got to get someone. So don't be fooled by that. Like, you got to get someone. But, I mean, the beauty of having Plevin on is that, like, Plevin just makes a mockery of himself and nothing else needs to be said. Like, I am so happy that the best they can find for a spokesperson is a lonely man in his parents' attic who with everything in his apartment is made of wicker. Like, that makes me happy. So we're going to have so again, we have the trailer out now. And I've shared the trailer on social media a couple times and in a blog post today. Just go click on it. Just click on it, please. That's all I'm saying, because that helps immensely. We cracked the top 25 today. So how this works in the podcasting business, I guess, is you want to get, it's really important to get in like the top 10 for Apple. We're in the top 25 now, right? The podcast is called 34 Fairview Road. And if you click on it, they pick up on that, and then you rise. And so I don't know how many we've gotten so far, but we want to get in the top 10. So if just go listen to it. I'm not going to play it on here because I want you to go and I want you to listen to it. We've shared it on Twitter. I've pinned it to the top of my Twitter and the top of my Facebook as well. Just go listen to it. So I'm going to bring on Mr. Phelps now, and we're going to talk about the pod. Hello. Should I call you Matt or MW or M William? It's Matt. Matt, you like Matt, right?
Yeah, when we're hanging out at your house. Yeah, I like
Yes.
Matt.
Okay,
So,
all right.
But most people call me Phelps. That works for me.
Oh, you're Phelps. Okay, cool. A little blurry there. Yeah.
I'm blurry.
A little bit.
Hmm.
That's okay. We'll be all right. It will be all right.
Oh.
As long the audio's all right. As long as the audio is good.
First, I want to say something about how to get the podcast.
Okay.
You can get the podcast on wherever you get your podcasts. I know I see a lot of people on X that are hating on Apple. If you hate Apple, that's fine. That's great. So you can get the podcast anywhere where you get a podcast. You can get this podcast. You just got to search for it. That's all. The reason.
Right. Just the first thing is how you can download it and make us both money. Let's get that out of the way. You can download it on anywhere where there are podcasts. You can download it and make me money. Yeah, he is really blurry. But, the narrative going around is like, oh, this guy Phelps understands it because he adopted, right? Just like John O'Keefe became the guardian of his nieces and nephews. He became the guardian of his sister-in-law's children right after she was murdered, right? That kind of thing. But it's not that happened, that she'd already given up her children years ago. So, that's one of the things that has ingratiated him to true crime audiences, especially on the non-supporter side. It just happens to be untrue. And it's unsolved as of now. It's his brother's wife.
Apple's up there, the link for Apple's, because they're the ones who count rankings. And it's important to, as you said, get up there so more people hear this.
Correct. So can you run down the list of people that you're able to say?
Right, correct. The more people that see it, the more money for both of us. I get it. I mean, my podcast, when I started my podcast, I was like, I'm never going to monetize, and I did that for years and years and years, but you just can't devote this much time to it. The time that you want without it having some monetary value. It's just impossible, the amount of money. I mean, kudos to anyone who's been able to do it. I get that this is that we all make money in some way from our podcast. But the first thing out of the gate is like, listen to it, download it. Yep, everybody should be downloading and listening to it. I mean, right out of the gate, he's salesman numero uno. Both of them are.
That you interviewed for this podcast. It's going to be 10 parts, correct?
Yeah, 10 parts, and the episodes are running about 40 minutes to an hour right now.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to give away everybody. That would not be fair to some people who are speaking with me, I think. But the main driver of the story here is you. I mean, you're the main driver of the story. We've spent a lot of time together. But you also know that I'm a journalist, that I'm going to talk to all different types of people. I'm going to get everybody's story. What interested me about this from the very beginning is the division. I've never seen a community divided like this over a murder. I mean, I say that I have a Hulu special on now that's called Little Miss Innocent, and that's based on a book of mine called We Thought We Knew You, and that took place in Utica, New York, a murder case, and that community was divided. So half the community believe her. The murderer, half the community believes she didn't do it, but there was no protest.
I mean, the thing about it is I think that it's not that it's just that they were divided, is that the town acted criminally. I mean, what other campaign has people acting criminally? Breaking the law and harassing witnesses. I haven't seen another case like this. I mean, usually in these innocence movements, they treat the victim's family terribly because they're such a powerful voice against the accused. But this is where people are literally acting criminally. And there's a lot of disordered people with personality disorders and people who are just on team criminal no matter what the case is, who've joined Free Karen Read. And there's some good people who've just been duped. But it seems like what I'm talking about today is it seems like everybody's using this case for their own benefit. And who's looking out for the O'Keefe family? Who's doing this for the O'Keefe family?
There was no name calling, no Christy Pan. There was none of that shit going on. There was just like, I mean, I've been threatened because I wrote the book, of course.
Ditto with Karen Read. So I don't know.
So I'm the bad guy for telling the story. So, but I've never seen anything of this nature. What I see in this case is, for the first time, I think, in a murder story, is I see like social media, like it's live. It's come out of the internet and it's live on the street now. That's what I see. I see this movement.
Really? What you see this movement directed by Karen Read. I mean, if you read the documents in Aiden Carney's case, it came directly from Karen Read to Aiden Carney. She's the one telling Aiden, according to Sean McDonough, ask Jen McCabe, do you think you could outsmart Karen Read? You thought you could outsmart Karen Read? No one can outsmart Karen Read. She's had this master plan since the beginning, guys. Act hysterical, get herself sanctioned before she ever has to ask in the loony bin, before she has to answer any questions from the police. Get away from everybody. She has known how to create her own evidence and narrate her own innocence fraud campaign since the beginning. So if you think Aiden's the brainchild of it, it's really the brainchild, in my opinion, of Karen Read's. He's like, I've never seen anything like it. He's telling the guy he's never seen anything like it, who's enacted it. He's enacted all of this. I mean, we didn't have any crusty panties, the nickname that you thought up. I mean, I've seen Towns Divided, but I've never seen anything this. He's like saying it's contentious. It's not contentious, it's criminal. And look at Aiden. Look at Aiden's face. He's like, get this guy off of my platform. They do not like each other from the get-go. But they have to work together because they're both making each other money.
That you created. I mean, you know, some people from my world, if you will, have kind of hit me up. Gee, you know, it's strange that you're interviewing Turtleboy. I didn't think you would do something like that.
What? Talk to the guy that started the whole thing.
And I simply, my answer to that is very simple. It's like, you cannot tell this story without without you in it. You've become part of this story. So that was very interesting to me in many respects. Of course, we're different.
I could tell the story without having Turtleboy in it. What does he add? What does he add? What does he add? Seriously, what does he add? I mean, just use the documents from his court case. That tells a story. Use Natalie's police interview, the go-between. That tells a story. I couldn't tell it without him. What he really means is I couldn't promote it without him. I mean, their deal is that Aiden promotes it. So I believe M. William Phelps, in an effort to get the entire community, because that's what he wants to make a lot of money from the story, is he's taking a position of guilt, but he needs Aiden Carney to promote it. So he can take a position of guilt and get those, and Aiden will get up in arms and create some controversy and say this podcast stinks, but you got to download it and hear what he said this time. And then he gets all the downloads. He gets the whole community that way. It's not complicated. I mean, if you think that M. William Phelps is taking this because it's like some great moral position, Anybody who had any morality wouldn't give 40% of his earnings to a guy with 17 plus witness harassment charges, and a guy who frequently badmouths the victim's family. No one who really was any kind of victim's advocate could stand it, could stand any of the money from their hard work going to Aiden Carney. I mean, tell me if you think I'm wrong. I just don't see it. I mean, that's where I'm at. I don't get it. Hold on one second, guys. I just want to get this screenshot here. Just going to load it up so you can see it. This is the text message alleged to be sent by Aiden Carney to Sean McDonough. I was indicted. So this is Aiden Carney talking. I was indicted for asking Jen McCabe, do you think you could outsmart Karen Read? Guess who told me to ask her that? Karen Read, right? The Read family reads the chat. If they see that other people feel the same way, they might change their minds. As you know, Karen cares a lot about public image. I went to jail for Karen Read and took the charges and protected her and went to effing jail for her. So that's from May. Pretty interesting. But that's the essence of Karen Read. Do you think you could outsmart Karen Read? She thinks she's going to outsmart everybody. And she might. I mean, if you think because Hank Brennan is at the helm of this, that it's a done deal, you're being naive. Or if you think that, well, the truth will win out in court. The most important thing in this case has to be the picking of the jury. From what I heard, they had turtle riders on the last jury, snuck on. I don't know how they're going to get them off. I mean, this was the original plan was to get Yannetti, which is David Yannetti, Karen Read's lawyer, to get the charges dismissed. That's what he's an expert at. But when that didn't work, the second line of defense for Karen Read was to poison the jury pool. And you can see Aiden was encouraging people to get on, but don't get caught. And one woman did get caught, bragging at a bar about how she was on the Karen Read jury. And she snuck on as a turtle rider, and a police officer overheard her, and she was thrown off the next day. But I heard some successfully made it all the way through. I believe that's how we got that hung verdict. So when people say, well, oh, Lally didn't present it, successful enough. I mean, you could have had Johnny Cochran up there for the state. If you read the note that the jury put, it was like, this is beliefs. It's not based on evidence. This is like faith, belief that in her innocence, and no one can change these people's minds. It's not based on evidence. It's just based on feelings and belief. And they're going to nullify the jury come heck or high water.
Types of journalists, I'll just put on the record there. We're not the same type of journalists. And look,
few are.
Well, look, that brings me to another point. I am really, it's really amazing to me and really upsetting to me and very strange to me that.
Look at Aiden's face. He loathes this guy. Look at that face. He's like tapping his knee. When can I get this guy off? When have I done my bit to promote this thing? It's like the challenge between two cowboys. There's not room. This town isn't big enough for the two of us. That's what we're witnessing here.
People are personally attacked and just ripped to shreds online for their opinions about a case, be it for Karen Read or against Karen Read. And I find this very compelling. I mean, but one of the biggest things for me here is, you know, forgotten in all of this is John O'Keefe. And I'm a victim's advocate. I told you about my personal situation last time I was at your house.
Right,
So I'm a victim's advocate, and I can, you can take this to the bank that in this podcast, you're going to know who John O'Keefe.
Okay, just a question. What victim's advocate would be comfortable giving 40% of their earnings to someone who treats the victims this poorly? Someone who boos them? Peggy O'Keefe, John's O'Keefe's mother, ended up giving Turtleboy the finger at one point. She was so tired of it. You don't see that every day. I mean, what victim's advocate would be comfortable with handing over their hard-earned cash to 40% of it to Turtleboy? Not me.
O'Keefe was. You're going to know things about him you don't know about him, and there's going to be a lot of time dedicated to who John O'Keefe was, because I think that's so important in this, just because he's been forgotten.
I disagree completely. He's been.
Yeah, I disagree completely. We need to forget him more. We need to forget him more. We need to obscure him more. I mean, that's how all innocence fraud campaigns are done, because there's really only room for one victim. And that victim has to be the accused or the convicted killer. There's no room for the actual victim. The worst thing that ever happened in the history of the world is going through the trial process for Karen Read. That's the worst thing. Did you guys hear? She's $5 million in debt. Did you hear? Did you hear? The sanctity of her home was compromised. Did you hear? There's no room for John O'Keefe and any sympathy, which is why I always say the most important thing for the O'Keefe family to do right now is to give interviews as a family. Their voices are the most powerful. And it's the most important because John O'Keefe's voice has been silenced forever by Karen Read. If you don't think that gives her a feeling of power, you may have been born yesterday. She loves that. She silenced him forever. And I believe John O'Keefe had had enough that night with her, was breaking up with her. He tried to break up with her right before this, tried to throw her out of the house, and she wouldn't go. He'd had enough of her. But does anybody remember the interview when she's coming from court? They ask her, but Karen Read, you loved him. And she goes, oh, we were dating. Every part of this innocence fraud campaign, the message should be that Karen Read wants out is, I hated John O'Keefe. You should hate John O'Keefe. His friends were criminals. He's a criminal, and I'm a wonderful victim. That's the message.
Forgotten.
Well, in the coverage,
he hasn't been forgotten by us. He's the first.
No, I don't.
Everything.
No, see, you took a person.
Yeah, it's the first thing we mention as we're advocating for his killer. It's the first thing we mention as we're harassing victims and booing his family and disparaging them and harassing them. It's the first thing we think of, guys. We haven't forgotten him. Oh, no. There's a lot more hell coming his family's way. Oh, this pees me off.
Personally.
No, I'm just saying, because that's a criticism that we get, that John has been forgotten. John has not been forgotten. We remember John every day.
when I say this, I mean in the coverage of it, the media coverage of this. John has been all but forgotten.
Well, he's dead. You know, it's like he's not on trial. John's outcome is
Exactly. If you don't think that makes Karen Read feel great, I made this guy not even matter anymore. He can't talk. The only one who can tell the story is me. The only person that was there was me. And I can control the narrative totally with that, which is why it is, again, any of John O'Keefe's friends, family, they want to come on this podcast, you always have a platform on here. But this is my concern with Gretchen Voss and her documentary, among other things, is that she's tied up all these family members into these contracts where they're not allowed to give interviews. This is what I've heard. I have not seen the contract. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize. But that's what I've heard, is that many people can't speak about John, about their memories of John O'Keefe. And they are his voice now. And the more they speak and the more they speak as a family, that's one of the aims of this innocence fraud campaign, is to get people too terrified to speak. And the other ones, like Jen McCabe, are witnesses in a criminal trial and been told not to speak.
determined. He's dead. And we are the person whose outcome is not determined is Karen Read. And we don't forget John, but Karen Read's fate, no matter what happens here, John's still going to be dead. Like, no matter what happens.
His memory's not dead, though. And that's what I mean. I mean, his memory, right. He needs to be remembered. He needs to be talked about. He needs to be memorialized.
Yeah, Turtleboy can agree with that. He can be memorialized as long as I get my 40%.
So but it happens in every murder case. This is not unique to this case. It's just something that I always advocate for whenever I do a book, whenever I do a documentary, whenever I do a podcast. I spend time talking about the victim. So in order to do that here, I have to talk to people who knew John. So
The problem with that is the people who, I mean, quote unquote, knew John. There's a lot of people who knew John, but they act like the only people I ever hear from on 2020 who, quote unquote, knew John are the people who think Karen Read's guilty. There is plenty of people who, quote unquote, knew John who support Karen Read. And I'm not.
Yeah, his weirdo girlfriend that he had for 2 weeks who joined up with Karen Read. Not to disparage the victim, but if those two women are representative of his taste in women, oh boy, we all have flaws. But boy, she dated him for 2 weeks and she's joined Free Karen Read. But there's so many of them that none of them want to talk. Isn't that interesting? There's so many people that knew John O'Keefe and perhaps met Karen along the way and think that she couldn't have done this. We just don't hear from them, guys. This is like ridiculous.
Not sure if you got a chance to talk to any of them.
I've spoken to one. Yes.
Okay.
I've spoken to one. So, and what I want to say about that is that I've also spoken to people who were just afraid to come forward because of the attacks that they will get. They're afraid to come out and speak because of the attacks they'll get. There's also people who have signed deals for, Netflix and other things who can't speak.
Well, they lied to you. I know the one person completely lied. There's no deal.
Since the time we spoke,
right there it is. That's what I heard behind the scenes, that They've all signed these deals with Netflix. What good is that going to do? So I urge anybody who signed a deal with Netflix, what are they going to do? Seriously, they're going to really sue you for talking to the press, for you breaking your contract. What are they going to do? You want, and they're all working for free. It's my understanding. They're giving their time for free and to tie them up at the most crucial time. I mean, if Karen Read is going to play this out in the court of public opinion, boy, it's gone to her advantage that she's the only one talking. And I'm sorry, the people on the non-supporter side, I don't find very helpful. It's manslaughter. She didn't mean to hit John. It was never the end product of relationship violence. This wasn't a domestic violence type situation when all roads point to it, my opinion. Gretchen Voss has done a really good job of making her narrative the only narrative that people want to talk about. So not the narrative I talk about on this podcast. Because what I see is someone who coercively controlled, manipulated, lied to, played with like a cat with a mouse, her boyfriend, because that's what psychopaths do. They can't attach. Cheated on him. I mean, that's Karen Read's personality, in my view. I mean, the campaign that she started after her crime, which I believe she did. I mean, you can call it an alleged crime, but I don't feel, it is alleged, but I feel she did it. Is very much like the way she treated John O'Keefe in life. It's the way she's treating him in death. Attack, diminish, destroy. If you read the Vanity Fair article, she's the one asking, was I abusive? I mean, you don't ask that out loud, but it's the same way that Karen Read gives any kind of admission. Did I hit him? Could I have incapacitated him in my drunkenness so that could I have clipped him? Yes, you could have, and you did. Well, she knows she hit something. We're just not sure what it was. It could have been a giant Bigfoot traipsing through the snow in the northeastern. You know what I mean? What do you think it was? What do you think you hit, Karen? I mean, her infotainment system was beeping. She couldn't have missed it. It's the equivalent of someone yelling, danger, 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 stop, louder and louder and louder the closer she got. What are we all talking about here? Instead, I turn on other channels. Oh, no. Relationship. This kind of relationship abuse doesn't come up in this case. Karen Read didn't. She might not have even known she did it. Give me a break. What are we talking about? With her foot 75% down on the pedal, never once hitting the brake 24 miles an hour in reverse, with her infotainment system beeping and beeping louder and louder and louder the closer she got. Then she tells her father, I know I hit something. And strangely, after her great performance at the crime scene in front of the police, she gets herself sanctioned in the loony bin so she doesn't have to talk to anybody. She doesn't have to get pinned down to a story. Wasn't that lucky? How did that happen? Takes her car. She goes back to John O'Keefe's house because she wants to talk to the kids and comfort the kids, gives them no comfort, gets her stuff, and hightails her car out of there with her family. Never to talk to the O'Keefe family again. If that's not the actions of a guilty person, I don't know what is.
I've spoken to several more who actually have deals in place with and they just can't. They're not obligated to speak.
We'll see. We'll see. Some of those people, if I ever see any of those people on Netflix special, I'll admit I'm wrong. But I'm telling you right now, none of those people ain't never going to be on Netflix, because a documentary. I mean, they could try a documentary from the perspective of the McAlberts. Is literally burning fucking money. Like, that's the kind of project you do if you don't want to make money. Like,
I don't mean that. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I get it. There's not much money on this side of the fence. I get it. For those of us not willing to do a dance with the devil, take that side. I mean, psychopath Kearney is telling the truth there. It's not much do-re-mi on this side, but we do it because we feel like someone has to get the truth out there. Court TV isn't going to do it. Law and Crime isn't going to do it. Someone's got to do it. Especially in the people on this side. I don't know why they overcharged her. Why don't they just give her manslaughter and give her a couple of years? Come on. Coming soon. The difference between manslaughter and second-degree murder. Let's go through it someday. Someday I'll get to it.
More closer to.
On our side, on my side.
No, I'm talking about the O'Keefe family themselves, and that's
right.
Right. I'm also talking about someone very close to Karen, someone very. They're very close that you hooked me up with, who just can't speak because of obligations to documentary people.
Did you get a chance to talk to Natalie? What did you say?
She wants nothing to do with this.
Right. Natalie, who could totally expose Karen Read and bring justice for the O'Keefe family. Natalie, the go-between, who now believes Karen Read, who was once the go-between and totally believed in Karen Read's innocence, wants nothing to do with it. So then you become a protector of Karen Read, just the way Gretchen Voss is protecting Karen Read with her 150 redactions in her taped interview with Karen Read and not handing over her notes. Everyone's protecting Karen Read. She's outsmarted all of us. So she's totally happy seeing Karen Read get away with it, as long as she's not harassed and gone after. See how it works? See how smart Karen Read is to create an element of fear? I mean, the messages I have gotten on X are so, I mean, they're always nasty from murderer groupies, but this is like over the top. I can't wait to find you dead in a ditch. You're a dumb, see you next Tuesday. En masse. I get it. But they're basically continuing to support Karen Read by not handing over the evidence that could really nail her and talking about it.
Wow.
It's not just the evidence, it's also the giving interviews, talking about it. Because Natalie saw how Karen Read really spearheaded this whole campaign from the beginning, and this whole conspiracy theory. It all comes, in my opinion, from the mind of Karen Read.
And she's a talker. I mean, that's interesting because Natalie loves to talk, so that's interesting. I mean, she's the reason kind of that I got. I mean, not the reason, but like, you know, she, as you know, for the first month or so, she was heavily involved in helping me out writing these stories and getting to the bottom of this. But interesting, she doesn't want to be involved now. But can you give us any insight on who you've spoken to that that no one else has? Is there anyone out there?
Yeah. Well, you've spoken to them, but
oh, are we allowed to say that? Are we allowed to say who or what, like what these people, who these people are, or is that something you want to say?
Let's hold that between me and you, close to the vest there.
Okay. Okay.
Right. We don't want someone to not download an episode if they think that they can find out a secret. Let's hold that close to the vest about what's coming up on some of these episodes.
But it is someone that's never been heard before and hasn't been on in 2020 or anything like that.
Absolutely. And
okay.
Someone who's very important. Very, very important.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from whoever that person is, and maybe there's more than one of them. We'll see.
I you know, and look, and we've talked about this, you and I also want to say something too that is important to me to say, that and I don't know if this your people, your fans, Turtle Riders,
correct.
If they're, I think most might be, or some may be aware of this, but I've seen some criticism of you and some really bad, nasty attacks on your marriage and your fathering, and I've spent time with you and your kids, and you know that none of that's true.
Well,
none of that is true.
Okay, I have no knowledge of how Aiden is as a father or how he is with his kids, but Turtle Riders aren't attacking it's the non-supporters. So he's telling the non-supporters, cool out, he's a great dad. He may harass or be accused of harassing witnesses, may have a million witness harassment charges against him, but he's a great guy behind closed doors. It's the kind of guy I'd like to give 40% of my profits to. So whether he gets them or not, or whether Aiden broke the contract or not, I don't want to listen to this podcast. It may be great. I hear little bits here and there, but it turns my stomach to be filling someone's pockets who treated the victim's family like that. Because what you're doing is you're re-victimizing victimized people when they're at their most vulnerable. It's revolting. It's revolting to me.
So that's the type of shit that I stay away from. You know, I when people tell me this, they tell me that. You know, I've heard all kinds of different things about you, things you've done. Look, I'm not interested in stuff that hasn't been proven. People haven't been charged for. People haven't been put in jail for.
Okay, so he's saying that unless this is like one of these BS lines that come out in true crime conversations. Well, she's innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. So that's what he's saying about Aiden. They haven't proved yet that he did this. But we've seen the videos. I mean, we've seen the videos with our own two eyes. Don't believe your lying eyes. We're not a jury. We can have an opinion. We're not a juror, nor will we ever be one. We're allowed to have an opinion as to whether Aiden's guilty or not. My opinion, I think there's a really good chance he'll get acquitted of all these charges. I think he stayed one step ahead of, all his enemies. because they hate him so much that they're all thinking impulsively and stupidly, frankly, in my opinion. They're acting emotionally and not psychopathically like Aiden thinks. That's my opinion. He may get away with it. He's got some lawyers who are really, like Karen's lawyers, really clever at distraction techniques and blowing things up to make things look like conspiracies against him when they're not. And I think it's too late. You know, just the way Karen Read compiled all this evidence, her faux evidence that exonerates her, like tapping John's car with her car lightly to make it look like that's where she broke her taillight when it's clearly broken in front of the Alberts home. I think Aiden's created his own evidence. They're very much cut from the same cloth, in my opinion.
Because it's all just bullshit talk to me, you know? So I'm interested in the truth, you know?
Right.
I'm interested in the facts, the truth. And I guess too, I'll say that, you know, an isolated clip and 144 characters is not a good fact. You know what I mean? You know, with a case like this, and as you know, I mean, I've done hundreds of murder cases over the years. I've written books about 50 of them, and this case here, it's so important to look at the totality of this case, not sections of it, not chosen pieces of the whole, if you will. It's important to look at this case as a totality, especially when we get into the investigation part of it.
Lovely Sphinx, nice to see you. Why does Turtleboy have doctor in front of his name? I believe that's something one of his fans called him, Dr. Turtleboy. He was like, I like the sound of that. I like pretending being like an award-winning journalist when I'm a blogger, when I'm a blogger who's won like one small award in a tiny paper, you know. It's just part of the, in my opinion, if you're asking me my opinion, it's part of the grift. You know, I think these two have met their match. I'm sorry. I know, you know, I know it's fun to like, you know, root for people and have people to root for on our sides, but I've never seen a story that is more disappointing with the characters on both sides of this case.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that question.
You don't want to. I mean, that's what people ultimately want to know. It's
well, you know, and here's the thing. I mean, I'm not gonna. That's not part of what I do. I mean, I'm in this. I'm a central guy. I'm coming out in this, and I'm presenting the facts. You know.
Okay, so devil's advocate here, because I get that, and we've
talked about this amongst ourselves. You know that. You know how I feel about certain aspects of this case and how I feel about other aspects of this case.
Right.
And I could tell you this: murder is not complicated.
No.
When you
not
investigate,
in this case.
Well, when you look at any murder, it's not complicated.
What do you mean it's not complicated? You have like the most complicated conspiracy theory that nobody can even describe how it happened from beginning to end. How they got John's body all the way, you know what I mean? Magically lifted all the way to the end of the yard without him ever being seen walking into the home. Saw one clip of Aiden saying, well, he ran through the snow. That's why only Karen saw him. He became invisible as soon as his feet started moving fast. And Karen never says he actually went in the house. It's always like, I looked at the door and he was like just at the door. Because she gives herself, again, plausible deniability. Because nobody can prove he actually went in the home that night. Never got in the home. I love how she says she kept this carpet for testing. She needs more money for testing. And the Turtle Riders will hand over all their hard-earned cash to get that tested because they just need to prove it.
And usually the most simplest explanation is the explanation. There are anomalies, of course, but usually the simplest explanation is the explanation. So I am not going to be coming out and saying one.
So what Phelps is talking about is Occam's razor, which is often gets shortened to the simplest explanation is often the best, but it's really between two equally good explanations. You pick the simpler one. That is the one that is to be true. So often, they have to be equally good. Hold on 1 second, guys. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I am in like a totally different environment. And my computer is about to go down. Thank you for your patience. So I wouldn't even say those are two equally good theories.
One way or the other here, I'm going to allow people to speak, and you do a lot of the speaking. Other people speak, as you mentioned. You did mention,
because I'll just say that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I mentioned what? I want to hear that sentence.
Well, you mentioned Sean, but you did mention to me, hey,
Sean has his sources and I have mine. It's like that's one thing. People always ask me about Sean's tweets, and I'm like, I always say the same thing. I have no fucking clue who Sean in the Gulf talks to, so I can't verify or deny anything he has to say. But he does his thing, and I do mine, and I like Sean. That's my policy on Sean.
Oh, you can't argue with the experience he has.
Right.
And that's why I spoke to him. I mean, you can't argue with over 30 years of law enforcement experience. So I'd like to have some of that experience into the podcast and see what he has to say. I mean, when he starts making allegations, I need to see the sources. I need to back that stuff up.
And you've asked me about a couple of those, about Sean's tweets, and I'm like, I have no fucking clue. Like, I don't. Sean's got his sources. I got mine. That's my policy on Sean.
Yeah.
So
now what were you going to ask me?
I was going to ask, I was just going to say this. It's like, because I get that you do true crime, and in most stories you want to share both sides of it, and I get that. To me, and to a lot of my followers, when they look at this, it's like, this ain't that story. Like, it would be like if you were a historian, or if you're Ken Burns, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to make a documentary on the Third Reich, and I want to get Hitler's perspective. You know what I mean? I just want to get his perspective. Like, tell us why gassing the Jews was a good thing. Like, why? Tell
Hitler's perspective. Yeah. You're the Joseph Goebbels of the Karen Read movement. I hate to say that, Turtleboy. You're talking about the Third Reich. That's what you are. You're the Joseph Goebbels of the propagandists of the Karen Read movement. You're looking at him. But of course, because there can only be Karen is perfect. Everybody's lying except Karen. Everyone's terrible and corrupt except Karen and her side, right? We haven't seen any of this corruption. We've only seen angry tweets written right after the crime, but there's corruption there. Just promise me. I could just promise me. I mean, just listen to me. I know my uncle's best friend's boyfriend is a police officer in Canton. They say all the Canton people know it. In fact, you can just kind of whiff the injustice through the air in Canton. It just stinks. The whole place stinks. That's what I hear about Canton. It's just corrupt. Hitler. If anyone's Hitler.
Tell me why you think that, like, we should really hear from that's the way the majority of people watching right now, that's the way we view this, is that like the other side is fucking stupid, and like the dumbest people in the world are on the other side, the plebeians of the world.
Right. You guys don't want to be with the dumb people, right? I'm a pepper, you're a pepper. Right? Don't you want to be a Karen Read supporter too? This is like, I think I showed the ash conformity experiment the other day. We can go over that again if you want. But that's the essence of it. We like to be in the in crowd. And I've had so many people be like, oh, you're so wrong on Karen Read. Oh, really? Why? Oh, just because I feel she is. Meaning, I don't want to have this uncomfortable feeling of being in the marginalized minority, if that's what it really is. You know, it's been interesting being in this area. And I talked to a lot of people last night, and they were like, oh, you're doing that case? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, I know someone who thinks she's innocent, and they are nuts. She's so guilty. What's wrong with people? That's what everyone said to me. What the heck is wrong with people? My one friend's into it, but she's off her rocker. I don't know what they're talking about. So obvious. So that's the vibe in this state. People say it's taken over the whole state, this case. So I'm not really sure they are in the majority. There's the people who think she's guilty, and there's the people who publicly speak out about it. And I'm sure there's the silent, I'm not sure there isn't a silent majority that thinks she's guilty. Hard to know. There's a very vocal supporter element. But does that match the silent majority and the terrified majority that is hiding in the shadows, afraid of Karen Read et al.'s wrath? Hard to know, right?
Liars, of the mentally unbalanced people. It's a very small percentage of the population. And so that's why I think when 2020 tried to produce their whole, balanced whatever, it was, it was just all his friends and family on there being like, everybody who thinks Karen Read is innocent is mean to us and they're booing us, which is a lie. We never booed them. That was a complete, that
you can literally watch the tape. You can literally watch the tape of them walking into court getting booed. You can literally watch it. You can literally watch footage from Turtleboy's own show of him speaking terribly about the family. Then there's the text messages written back and forth, and I don't know what possessed Paul O'Keefe to even interact with Turtleboy. I wouldn't encourage anyone to interact with him. He just recently went up to what he calls the Blue Smurfs, meaning the Karen Read non-supporters, and interviewed one of them. Don't interact with Turtleboy. I don't know what they're thinking. I think they all think that they're going to win and gain and, have, game him, but you're not going to, it's not that you're going to never outsmart Aiden. It's that you're ultimately not going to win because he's willing to do things that you won't. I don't know, you're setting your own self up. There's too many people acting impulsively. And it all benefits Karen. Impulsively, out of spite, out of emotion.
It's like equivalent to the Very Fine People hoax. It's a complete lie. So that's what I wanted to say about that.
Well, first of all, I don't want to ascribe to the opinions you gave about people and all that. That's not, I don't do that. So I and the Hitler thing, I'm just going to stay away from that. I don't
but you get my point with that, right? That like not everything.
He's like, let's not get into Hitler metaphors, which is really interesting because we just had the election and the very fine people on both sides is something that the media and the Democratic Party, and I'm not making a comment on either party, but it just happened in our election, for those that don't know, that Trump was consistently quoted as saying that they were very fine people on both sides. And it was and he said, and then they cut it right there. And then he went on to say, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis. So they cut it before he could explain what he meant. He was talking about people on an argument taking down monuments, is my understanding of it. But also one of the issues, because I know that Aiden has publicly said that he's a Republican and a Trump supporter, that his issue, that one of the big issues with Trump is that he's literally been compared to Adolf Hitler and how ridiculous that is and blah, blah, blah. And there he is comparing the anti-Karen Read side to Adolf Hitler. So, this is like very common in innocence fraud campaigns. They use like what's in the public consciousness. They use what's in our what's popular to make their arguments. And he's like, I'm not going to deal with any of that. I'm not going to deal with your Third Reich metaphor.
Deserves not everything is a both sides thing.
And that's not what this is. This isn't a seesaw back and forth. That's not that's not what I'm saying here. I think you are now. Well, let's give it some.
No, I'm not making comment on Trump or the Democratic Party. I'm just saying these has been in the public discussion in the past months with our election, the election we just had of Donald Trump, and Aiden is using that in his arguments. These are things being argued. Does everybody get that I'm not making an argument for or against Donald Trump or making a comment on Donald Trump or the Democrats or Harris Waltz's policies? I'm just saying this was in our media, this is in pop culture, and Turtleboy is using that for his own arguments. Okay. Just want to make that clear. I get accused enough of being far right. My mom said to me, "Are you really far right? Are you really a far right person? That's what I read on the internet, that you're far right."
Context, because everything deserves context. I have a podcast, Paper Ghosts, and that's an investigative podcast. Me on the ground. The first season, I spent 12 years producing that. The second season, I spent 5 years. The third season, same. So those are investigations that I've conducted with unsolved murders, and I'm on the ground, be it, in Canada, in tech, wherever it takes me. And I am investigating that, and I am giving my take on what's going on. That's not what this is. That's not what I'm doing here. So your both sides comment. That's not what this is. This is, I'm trying to figure out the truth here through all the noise. That's what I'm trying to do. And you're the person who, you look, and I say this, I've said it before, and I say it in the podcast. Arguably, you have done more research than anybody in this case. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question.
What? He's done more research? No, he's gotten more documents right from Karen Read and spun them. I wouldn't say he's done more research. I love those text messages between Karen and Aiden where she's like, "I'm the defendant, Aiden." He's like describing it to him. She's explaining legalese that anyone with any familiarity with true crime would understand. I'm the defendant, Aiden, in this document.
Question about that. You've had good sources. You've broken exclusive information. You've written, I don't know how many posts.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the trial. I became
right.
I've been down there knocking on doors, interviewing people, doing my thing.
Right.
That no one else did.
So that's an important story to tell. And I will be supplementing that, with other interviews, obviously. And it's not just tit for tat thing. It's not a tit for tat thing. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm trying to do is, one of my expertise is documents. So I've probably viewed hundreds of thousands of pages of documents in murder cases over 25 years, especially crime scene photos, all of that stuff. So I rely a lot on documents.
How is he getting crime scene photos? Who's giving him crime scene photos? And how do you use crime scene photos? I mean, I'm big, as you know, I'm big on reading the court transcripts and the appeals documents, et cetera, but they inspired my podcast because there's so much misinformation from these kinds of innocence fraud campaigns. But I don't understand how you would use the actual crime scene photos. I guess you'd describe them. I don't know. To come to a conclusion. So is he putting himself in a detective role? I'm just trying to figure it out.
So there's a lot of documentation in this case, right? So a lot of times when I've shown up at your house or in Southie, wherever, the questions I've asked you are based on what I've looked at in the documentation, and you give your explanation for that, right?
Always come with receipts. Always.
Yeah. So I come to you and I say, hey, what happened here? I mean, why? What's this? And then you give your.
I always come with receipts, many of which I've made myself, just like Karen Read. Yeah, no, I think they're two peas in a pod. I get that people want heroes. They want to have people who say that Karen Read is guilty. They want to hold them up on a pedestal. But these are, in my opinion, they're literally in business together. And in my opinion, they're two sides of the same coin.
Explanation for it. So it's not a thing where I would go and speak to someone on the other side and say, well, Turtleboy said this. What do you think? That's not what this is at all. It's a narrative. It's a comprehensive narrative of this case because
there's some messages he released where he's like, do you have these documents? He was looking for Proctor's text messages, and had he just watched the trial, he would have had He could have just transcribed them. So it looked like from what Aiden released, and obviously strategically released, and even I was sympathetic, because who likes a cheater who's not willing to do their own work and their own research? But in fairness, Aiden is getting 40% of the proceeds from his podcast. So I guess he's entitled to ask for some shortcuts. But even I felt badly when he's asking Aiden for the proctor's texts and everything. He's going to Aiden. It's like, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? He's like, how would I get the FBI investigation? Maybe the same way that you got the grand jury documents, Aiden. But if you look at the, if you go back to the episode where I actually read out, I believe I did, read out, where Aiden reads out, excuse me, I didn't read it out. Aiden read it out, the agreement, the legal agreement between himself and Phelps. The Aiden's main duty was to promote it. So that's why I think he's going with the Karen Read guilty side. I'll get the non-supporters, you get the supporters, and together we'll get the whole group. And Aiden is like, this thing stinks. Just download it. Just do it for me because I need the money. But it stinks. Because nobody wants to hear that side of it. The Karen is guilty side.
Really, for the most part, we're kind of in a vacuum here in New England. The rest of the country has not heard about this case. It's not like this is a huge case when you start going out into the true crime world.
Really?
Yeah. It's not.
I don't know. It got a shit ton of views.
Yeah, well, it's a huge case if you tell the fantastical myth story. That's where the big views are. The people who want to hear the fantastical cover-up story, the cover-up that never was. I really feel like our need for more and more fantastical stories is getting greater and greater. We want to hear more and more stories, and our press is always happy to join in on an innocence fraud campaign if it takes aim at the police and makes them look bad. They're all about that.
Every time, like when I go on Law and Crimes or Court TV's thing, and I compare Karen Read views to like any other, Chad Daybell, like any of the other competing ones, Alec Baldwin, Karen Read wins every fucking time. Like I think my audience used to be local. It is international now.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is they don't know the case, right? They don't know it like it's known here in New England, like every single twist and turn. They don't.
Well, the people I talked to didn't know every single twist and turn. They just know that the whole state is obsessed with it. The accents here are amazing, by the way. The ka.
Don't know it like that out in the true crime world. A lot of people you mention Karen Read in the true crime space. Karen Read, they're like, oh, didn't she? The car? What? The police officer? So they don't really know the case, the ins and outs of it, is what I'm saying. So this case, this podcast will give everybody a full view of what this case is and the complexities of this case, the complex characters in this case, the liars in this case, the absolute incompetence of law enforcement in this case.
Where's the incompetence? What would you do? What would you do? How would you investigate a case in the Northeastern? You want to talk solo cups and all that nonsense. How would you preserve the evidence in extraordinary circumstances? Everyone thinks they can do it better, right? Everyone can Monday morning quarterback these police officers and think they could do it better. And where Karen Read's team exploits it is that these are not writers, these police officers. They hate writing these reports. Anything that they leave out in these reports, the defense has exploited. They don't get into it for paper pushing and writing, writing up reports.
It really is gonna key on a lot of that stuff.
Well, what makes this audience, my audience, is these people are fucking informed, man. The people watching, we're doing a Canton trivia next Friday.
Yeah, they're informed. They can repeat back my propaganda exactly.
And I am gonna have to come up with some tough fucking questions because, like, if I ask,
oh man, I really should have. This is gonna be so the language. My apologies. I'm sorry. I was under the weather and I came up here, just because for a family thing. And man, my apologies on the language on this. Why are they swearing every two? Why does he swear every two minutes? Why? Because I guess they're all just I guess he doesn't need the views, right? He just gets his audience just like Venmos him all their cash.
some basic shit like who texted each other at 2:22? Like, let me ask the chat right now. Which two people texted each other, or which two people called each other at 2:22 in the morning for 22 seconds? Go ahead, chat. Tell me which two people did that. Watch how many people are going to get this answer right. It's going to be fucking hundreds of people right now. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here they start coming in.
Here they start coming in. 4, 4, 4, 4. I just want to say 4 for the rest of the show. 4, 4.
Here they start fucking coming in. They're all gonna Brian and Brian. Like, that's just one. These people know fucking everything about this case. Like, I've never seen anything like it.
Look at him. Look at him. The cult leader and his devotees can repeat what he says exactly.
Before, how invested people get in the documents, it's just been wild.
And can I say that
can I just say something amazing about you again, since I'm relying on you to promote my podcast? Can I just say that you're an amazing figure, never to be seen before or since in true crime?
It's important to say that information is one thing, but having the experience and the context to look at that information is another thing. So you have to really know what you're looking at, what you're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. You have to know, what evidence actually is, what a fact actually is, and what is not, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure.
Turtleboy's like, when can you leave? He's like, don't tell me the difference. There is no difference between a fact and something I thought of in my imagination, or Karen Read thought of in her imagination. In fact, there's no difference between a fact and what Karen Read's thought up in her imagination, leaked to me, and I put out, and they've mentioned in their own briefs. He's like, This is like the look your kid gives you when he's not listening to you. It's just going off.
People watched, a lot of people streamed this trial when it was live. I mean, it was, big news around here. So people know what people said. I don't argue with that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I got a show coming up about rubber duckies I got to get into now, because if you didn't see the latest thing, Detective Bukaki.
Yeah, so I got to get into some more witness harassment stuff. Been nice talking to you. We gotta talk about our latest. We've actually been busted harassing more witnesses. Got to move on. Yeah, when you talk about facts, my eyes start glazing over. Facts and court documents. Law.
Is going around trying to charge more people with witness intimidation, including one woman who did the crime of leaving a rubber ducky with the word letters FKR on it outside of D&E Pizza. Did you happen to see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's called witness harassment. Doesn't matter what it's on, Aiden. We left it right on the Albert's pizza chain, or pizza place, excuse me. It's not chain, pizza place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I gotta get to business. So
So enough with you. I can't stand you. I already hate your guts. And Phelps is like, did I sell this? Did I sell this to the free Karen readers? Do I got them on my side? Are they going to download my thing? Can I mention again that you can download it on any platform?
appreciate you coming on, and we're all looking forward to hearing this podcast. And anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Aiden. You know,
of course.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you.
Is that just the look with the, like, I can just see his knee bouncing up and down. Like, he just looks like a kid in junior high. Like, yeah, teacher. Wrap it up. He loathes them.
Yeah, I saw one.
That was awesome. LOL, says the Glare. Another free Karen Read.
One comment there. Be nice to our
Yeah.
guest.
That's the Glare. That's Will. Will's a great guy. Will's a big content creator who's been awesome, and he's another guy I met through this. He lives in Tennessee. He's a true crime guy. I guess it would be his genre before this, kind of true crime with a dash of drama, and
a dash of drama I hear in his personal life too.
And, he has been he's like me, fully invested in Karen Read's innocence. I've met him twice. He was just here this weekend, so he's a good guy.
I just wish, but last thing I'll say is I just wish, but it won't happen here in this case, but that people would just be allowed to speak their opinions without being attacked, you know, and especially personal attacks, you know, that to me is where
you're like, that's our bread and butter. Personal attacks, intimidation, that's what we live for. Harassment, booing, especially people who are grieving John O'Keefe. We like to really go after them, especially the family. The more in grief they are, the more we really like to go after them. So I'm going to just let that go in one ear and out the other. Phelps, don't mind.
you lose credibility with me, not you.
Yeah.
But people out there lose.
Not you. Some other guy with 19 or 17, whatever it is, witness harassment charges. Some other guy, not you. Not the guy actually accused of harassing witnesses. Not the guy going to court for harassing witnesses. It claims of SA. Put out this horrible tape of him tormenting his victim. Alleged victim, I guess I'll say. His accuser, when she's horribly vulnerable and in a time of need. I mean, anyone else would be embarrassed to put that out. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Doris. I am feeling better. I could not miss this. So I came a little bit ill, traveled a little bit ill, and I am feeling better now. But yeah, maybe I'll talk about it on another live exactly how all this went down. But I did want to check in with all you guys. I missed you and wanted to catch in with Karen Read. It really is the toast of the town over here. Sorry, my apologies. My apologies, guys. So that's what I have for today. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this episode. You know, it's depressing, you know, to have this stuff out there. I really feel like we can do just so much better in true crime it's like we settle for this really mediocre content. And it could be just so much better. And the way that victims and victims' families are treated, it continues to be like they're a non-entity and not important. You know, the few families, thinking of Sherry Ballard, I don't know if you know that case, the Crystal Rogers disappearance. There's 3 people coming up on trial for her murder. And I just feel like, you know, she went out and got out and talked to every reporter that she could, did every interview that she could, and it made such a difference. You know, we, as humans, we sympathize with what's put in front of us. And when a person is dead, they're silenced forever. And all you hear from, and Karen Read has made it certain that the only person that's heard from is Karen Read, and she's going to tell the story, or she's going to have her flying monkeys in the form of sympathetic or ambitious press to do it for her. So it's been totally the Karen Read narrative of the case. And it's really interesting. It looks like Brennan is digging way back into Karen Read's past, into some asking for police records and asking for some serious discovery for the second trial. So we may hear a much different version of, or see a totally different version of Karen Read than or hear the version that we've only heard rumors about, certainly in the second trial. So I'm curious to see that. It looks like it's going to be delayed till April. But I really appreciate everyone listening and hanging out with me. I will be back. I guess I'll be back. I think I'm going to trade off maybe Monday and Wednesday night, something like that this week. So I'll probably be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern, usually my day off, but I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Another episode. Have a great night, everybody. I'm leaving off with my hit single, I Hit My Boyfriend with My Car, written by me, music by AI. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.
I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system a clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mom. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit yet. I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. my clown.